to All Elite Reviewing, the only podcast that covers every corner and facet of the All Elite universe, from BTE to the very odd and irregular NWA crossover and all the worlds in between. And this week we have, I can't believe it already, our 17th episode as we delve into the fallout from Full Gear. I'm Joshua Starnes.
And I'm Shamik Ghosh.
All right. And it has been a busy week. We spent, for anyone who managed to get through our entire 3-hour episode last week, when we caught up on a month's worth of Saturday dynamites. And
at least it's just a couple of days worth today. So
this week you will have a much lighter lift. So as we
I'm not going to guarantee we talk less, but there's going to be less to talk about. But we just might have a lot of ideas. I don't know. Let's see where the night takes us.
Well, obviously, the big news is all about Full Gear and the evolution of the next round of storylines that are going to take us through the end of the year and into January and February. And mostly Dynamite and Rampage were setups for Full Gear, so and a little bit of treading water for Full Gear. The main elements to talk about were their setups for the introduction of the Chaos faction. But I can't let any time pass before I mention that on Dark Elevation this week, we got the first ever meeting between QT Marshall and Darby Allin in the ring. And you know what? Great match.
I mean, QT healed it up. Like, I saw him, like, talking to the crowd. Like, you need to against Darby Allin, right? But, like, that's fine. But he's like, he needs to get the crowd to do QT. But at least he's not wearing stupid bowling shirts. And, like,
I was thinking that. I was thinking that today. Because on this week's Elevation, he had a match with John Silver. And he's in, like, the zipper hoodie. And I don't know if it's just because he's wrestling and it's easier to get out of than the bowling shirt. But I was thinking, hey, he's ditched the bowling shirts. Good for him.
I mean, the only way I can take this is that, like, he's like, man, those AER guys, all of you reviewing, like, they really get on me about this bowling shirt shit. So maybe I should not change my character so much or my personality or the way I deliver lines, but, like, hey, at least I wear something that's makes more sense in a wrestling match. He had slightly more intimidating. I don't know where hoodies and, like, the fashion hierarchy falls out. Bowling shirts are just low on the hierarchy as far as who I'm supposed to be intimidated by.
But, you know, Darby Allin mostly only wears a hoodie, too. They both come to a ring in the hoodie, and then you're not going to be able to tell them apart. You're not going to know who's who.
Yeah, actually, that's when you bring it up. Even Darby's ring gear, I'm like, really shorts over jeans, like, or shorts over tights, whatever. But at least the same color. But, like, if we got over that with Darby, like, you know, at least his new music video is awesome, and he has Sting behind him with, you know, with the baseball bat whenever he needs it, which he barely needed it this week. But, yeah.
No, he needed it once, and that was about it. But they got a good match, and then the rest of Dynamite and Rampage was moving forward in the TBS tournaments. Jade Cargill got a very short squash against Santana Garrett.
I mean, that's building for the TBS title match, really, for the women. Really,
at some point, though, we're assuming that she's going to be in the title match, which we're assuming is going to be somewhere between 6 and 12 minutes. She's had like one 6-minute match so far. Everything else has been about 1 or 2 minutes.
I think Red Velvet's been like her longest match. Yeah.
And that's her next opponent is Red Velvet, so I'm hoping her next red match against Red Velvet goes a bit longer, because she does need to get going beyond, unless she's just going to be Goldberg for her whole career, which is not like a bad thing. She needs a bit longer than 2 minutes.
Build the credibility up until, like, she's ready to challenge for the title. Like, that's what it is. But I mean, I think it's gonna be Thunder Rosa before her. But yeah.
I don't know. It could go. I can see it going either way. Although it'd be weird to have. It
almost depends who wins the TBS title, but yeah.
Yeah, I can see them having. It's weird to have 2 heel champions, but it's also sort of like who do they want to push against Britt? Because
I'm not doing that. TBS. Remember, Josh, that one pay-per-view were like, there's no way they can have 4 heel champions, and they did. So,
and they did. But not for long, as we will get to. But I feel like it's more like they're not going to have the TBS champion challenging Britt. So one of them will be the champion, right? And one of them will be being sent to Britt. And I guess it's just depending on which one.
I wonder if they're going to do TBS champion like your TT champion. I think a bit, especially this week, they have a TT champion is basically just open challenge all the fucking time.
I think so.
Yeah,
and that's good. That gives you 2 women's matches on each show, and one of them can be storyline stuff, building up.
I'm okay with just Britt. The rankings just matter for the big titles and not for the ones. Yeah.
And one of them can be open challenge, just any good female wrestler we want to come in and have a challenge, and it gets you, you know, a reason to rotate a lot more of the women's roster without necessarily having to spend a lot of time building angles for it. And I appreciate, especially looking at what some other shows do, I appreciate that they try hard to build an angle for every match or series of matches before they do it. They really don't like doing matches without angles, but it also means it's sometimes hard for anyone to get on TV because They got a Bill
Brian
Angles for the hand. For the
Oh, sorry.
was he dead?
No, they have nothing for him, which is just it's
He
sad.
was. I know. At least
I'm not one of those guys that I don't like praise. There's some things AEW does. I'm critical about some things they do. And one of the things I'm critical is the way they handle Brian Cage. But
yeah,
I also get why it happened. But it's unfortunate the whole sort of set of circumstances, really.
hey, at least Ricky Starks got to be on commentary on Rampage this week, and they got to go. And
wasn't the FTW champion doesn't even fight; he just commentates.
Well, that's because I think he's still.
I mean, he's great at
100% medically. From what I've read, he's still not 100% medically cleared, and they're being very careful about his neck.
Brian Cage is like, "Fuck your doctor."
Apparently, Lance Archer's going through the same thing because that's what hit him.
But Lance had it. We saw that. We didn't see actually what happened to Ricky. We saw what happened to Lance. So we know that Lance is going to take some time, deserved time, because that was a bad injury. Jesus, oh my god. Yeah.
But that's okay because it gives us time for Team Taz to feud and Hobbs to feud against Dante Martin and Leo Rush.
What I thought the buy-in was just going to be the women's match, but there was something that I thought they shoehorned in, which is basically
where there was. I'll get to that.
Dante Martin,
we'll get to that in a second because there was a fan. They finally got Leo Rush in the ring for the first time since Double or Nothing, and they had a fantastic tag match with Dante Martin and Leo Rush.
He was good. I just didn't realize
he's really good. 5'2". Yeah. He is 5'2". But
he's like a male Red Velvet, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's good. He's
good. Yeah, no, he definitely held his own in the ring. That's what I thought.
He had to.
Is he going to be a heel or face? Because
it's weird. When he came in, it felt like he was going to be a heel, and it feels like the long-term storyline is for him to heel it up with Dante until Darius comes back and Dante has to turn against him. But when you start bringing in them against like FTR and FTR being jerks and trying to steal, Dante away, it feels like he's turning more.
But you know what? At least FTR is the only stable still trying to recruit. Even Dark Order doesn't recruit anymore.
Well, there's like 400.
Still trying to get it done.
There's like 400 people in Dark Order. Yeah, but Ricky and Brian Cage can't wrestle. And there's
what's the point of being a demagogue if you don't have that thing?
There's like 400 people in Dark Order. They don't need to recruit anybody.
No, there's definitely not 400 people in Dark Order.
And they finally got Hangman. They gave up on Griff.
He's not even part of Dark Order,
isn't he?
No, he's not. I mean, he's adjacent to Dark Order, and
he's Dark Order adjacent. Well, that's fine. It's close enough. Who knows?
They asked him to join. He kept saying no. You didn't want to let them down, right? That was a part of the whole mental thing he was going through.
And we'll get to that because obviously it feels like he's there are some changing of ways and whatnot, but we'll get to that. The only other thing to bring up is due to the unbelievably fullness of the Full Gear card, the aptly named Full Gear card, some stuff had to get left off, and this is not the first time. Last time Pac and Andrade had to get kicked. I mean, there was also
that's right.
Couldn't get into the country, but they had to get kicked off onto the Rampage show. And this time they got onto the main show and had a really good, really fun match. But that meant there was no room for the Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy lumberjack match, which is too bad because everybody missed seeing all of the best friends actually dress up as lumberjacks for the lumberjack match, which of course they did. And
I mean, that was okay shit.
That's why it's great. That is what is great about professional wrestling.
Even do that. Don Callis is like a cameraman.
This is why, with a goatee under a mask. It's great.
Yeah.
This is why
people don't know if you don't have facial hair.
You have to. This is why, even if no one can see it, because it it's there. This is why the Best Friends may be the greatest stable in All Elite Wrestling.
But without Prince, I'm sorry, no.
Because
Trent makes a lot of that group. I mean, we miss Trent.
You know what?
Mama Sue is taking care of him.
Mama Sue's well, that's what they got Wheeler Yuta for, to the point where he's now trying to convince other people that he is in fact Trent. They had so this week on Dynamite. No, it's
Trent. I'm just saying, put a video package. Be like, hey, why are you part of Best Friends? Or like, it's basically just he seems like he's just some guy just hung out and they're like in their locker room. It's like, oh, well, you're around. Pretty much. And he's better than that. Even my other friends have said like, oh, he was in NJPW. He's done a lot of good things. I'm like, yeah, the guy can go in the ring, but like, what is his personality? Just tell me something about his personality. And they refuse to do that.
They will eventually. I know everybody. Whenever you're a new guy who loses a lot,
is Trent going to come back ever?
He's pretty hurt, but he's going to come back. He had neck surgery, so he's got to get over that before he can come back.
Then him and Ricky Starks just like Ricky Starks' neck or some shit.
Right now, Wheeler Yuta's job is to get body slammed by Wardlow or power bombed by Wardlow like a dozen
or
times,
knee in the face by Wardlow,
and then knee in the face, or get completely destroyed by John Moxley. I mean, everybody's got to pay their dues. Even though he actually can go. He's really good in.
Oh, I know. Right now. I'm just saying personality.
But, they did say when he came in that he was like Chuck's apprentice, and on BTE mainly he's like the whipping boy that they make fun of and make him take notes until Chris Statlander chokes him out and tells him his finish sucks. But so the big thing long-term storyline wise this week is that Brian, before we get to beyond Full Gear, is that Bryan Danielson and Rocky Romero of New Japan Strong, who is one of the long time remaining members of Chaos in New Japan, came back to America.
Because I was just complaining about Wheeler Utah, and if you guys remember when Trent got injured, before Trent got injured, they brought in Rocky Romero to kind of be another best friend.
Well, he and Trent
were Roppongi Vice thing, right?
He and Trent were tag team partners in New Japan for a long time. Roppongi Vice, and Rocky lives in LA and works with the LA dojo on the New Japan Strong quite a bit, and they show quite a bit. And he came in along when they were bringing in some other New Japan guys to wrestle. He did a dark match, and they had quite a bit of things where they were making him an honorary member of Best Friends before he went.
But I thought he was Utah going forward, and then he just went the fuck away. And
no, now
he's back.
Well, he's got a full-time gig with New Japan. He won't be spending long periods of time in AEW. He's basically here to be one of the bridges to New Japan, which they formed very, very strongly this week, where he did come back and as a member of Best Friends, he came to the Best Friends, which he is a member of, and told them that as a member of Chaos and best friend of Chaos's leader, Kazuchika Okada, he wanted to, they had a very long day. It was only on their internet, but they didn't mention it on the show. He wanted to extend an invitation to the rest of Best Friends to be members of Chaos, which Trent and Chuck.
So is that how Orange Cassidy now like a member of Chaos?
Yes, Rocky Romero, when he came for his match with Bryan Danielson, officially, and that's why Orange Cassidy was like seconding him. He officially extended.
Wait, has Orange Cassidy fought like Japanese wrestlers in this whole thing?
Never. But he's gonna. But
he's hilarious.
I can't wait to see it.
I think the Japanese wrestlers go along with it, but yeah.
Well, they will. There's a lot of goofy stuff. You can't. I mean, you think there's goofy stuff in AEW? There's a lot of goofy stuff in Japanese wrestling. There's serious Japanese wrestling and there's really strange.
Wait,
Japanese
was it Joey Ryan like the dick flip thing? Was that part of Japanese wrestling, or was that his own?
That's just Joey Ryan.
Okay, I thought it was a Japanese wrestling thing. My bad.
No, there is stuff that's equally goofy. There is stuff equal to that, but it's just not particularly that. So what for people who aren't like super read into the Japan and particularly specifically the New Japan scene, and I'm not saying that Shmeek doesn't know anything about wrestling, but Shmeek doesn't know about wrestling.
No, why to go along with that? I know something about wrestling. Why are you on this show? He's not just some slug.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, yeah, because I'm a slug that knows something about wrestling.
There's the three big. We've had already two of the three biggest factions in New Japan Wrestling have already been on AEW regularly. Obviously, Bullet Club.
Suzuki's Goons or whatever.
Suzuki Goon, which was Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer, and obviously a lot of Bullet Club with the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega.
But Bullet Club's like a completely like non-Japanese, like Japanese faction, right?
That was the whole point. It was all for a long time. It was entirely made up.
All just white guy.
Yeah. Not just white guys. You had like one of the individual members were like Bad Luck Fale and Tamatanga. It was basically non-Japanese.
Yeah. What's the name? Shogun or no?
Gaijin.
Whatever. Yeah.
It does have, although it's grown and mutated over the years, so it does have Japanese members now. It's kind of like changed from what it was, but it's there. But the only one that they haven't, well, there's two. There's two that they haven't really had. They still haven't had anyone from Los Ingobernables up on, and who knows if they ever will. And they hadn't had anybody from Chaos. Chaos is used to be the big heel faction. but gradually turned into the big face faction and is now.
I'd say Bullet Club seems like the big heel faction for Japan.
Well, Chaos it was basically the rise of Bullet Club as the new big heel faction.
Oh, so like Dark Order, how they were like big heel faction, now they're face.
It kind of forced Chaos to turn into a face faction because they needed one.
Right.
And they are the baby face faction. In fact, you can more like the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, you can like count on at some point some baby face Chaos member is going to defect, turn on chaos and become a heel and join Bullet Club before eventually coming back.
Oh, that's wrestling.
Like that's wrestling. It's
one of my favorite. The corporation versus the people.
Corporation. I hate the corporation, the authority, all that crap. But and the leader of Chaos is Kazuchika Okada, the top guy, the ace of aces in New Japan Pro Wrestling. One of the greatest wrestlers in the world.
Everybody says like with reverence, a lot of reverence.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and his match series with
Kenny Is he the short arm clothesline guy?
Yes, he's the short arm clothesline. That's it. That's his finisher. Is the Rainmaker. Well, he has two finishers. He has three now. He does a Tombstone. He does the Rainmaker is his primary one, and now he's got basically a sleeper hold that he does. But mostly
that's good. I was going to think like a striking and submission hold, but yeah, that's the thing.
And his series with Kenny Omega is like one of the great match series ever. Everybody's been waiting for a fifth and final match between them. And if he's coming to AEW, there's basically two guys from New Japan everyone wants to see come to AEW: Kazuchika Okada and Kota Ibushi, both of whom were referenced on this episode of Dynamite.
Right.
They referenced Okada by name many times.
The fact that I'm like, you guys are saying this with a purpose, almost like you don't
feel
like it like accidentally, right? Yeah.
And then in the contract signing, Hangman made it clear that he was referencing Kota Ibushi as the former tag team partner, right before he got hit in the head and with the camera, and Kenny signed a contract in his own blood. So now best friends.
But I know vaccinations are great and that, but we still don't live in a post-hygienic world. So I'm kind of fucking gross.
That's wrestling. That's wrestling. So some really good.
But it was unique. I mean, we've seen so many like ridiculous contract signings over like our fucking like wrestling, watching careers. But like the signing and blood thing, which you think would have happened a long time before, we haven't seen them really.
I can't remember it. Right. I don't remember anything like that recently.
Signing in his blood. All right.
Yep. So lots of good setup for Full Gear, which last week when we were making our predictions for Full Gear,
because Don Callis was part of that segment, and we haven't seen him for 6 weeks.
They even took him off of the poster just so that you would forget about him when he suddenly reappeared as the cameraman.
That guy.
As soon as I saw a second cameraman in the ring being photographed by another cameraman, I was like, oh, I smell shenanigans. That's what's gonna happen.
I don't know. We use the same words, and every time like. Shenanigans is shenanigans. Interference, a weapon, anytime of DQ, shenanigans.
So we had lots of stuff coming. We got best friends, now members of Chaos, getting railroaded by Matt Hardy and the Blade, which means and Orange Cassidy specifically.
So that's not over, folks. Even though they said it's going to be over.
Even though they said it's going to be over, he's saying, "All right, this is enough. I'm calling in some backup. We're supposed to be part of Chaos now, so I think we're going to have some backup, and backup they shall have. We will get to that. Because first we got to get to Full Gear." Last week when we did our Full Gear predictions, when the last thing we did was making our guesses of whether this would be. Because Full Gear has been usually the weakest show every year that they've done it.
Really?
So yeah,
is it a seasonal thing? Like
it's just the way it goes. Some of it's bad luck, some of it's bad positioning.
Like what? How many Full Gears have been in? One or two?
This is the third one.
Yeah. So
yeah, but I mean that's just the way it's
small sample size for a trend.
Yeah, but it's been like Revolution and All Out and Double or Nothing have almost always been great shows in Full Gear. Like
Full Gear was fantastic.
Full Gear 1 and Full Gear 2 are two of like the weakest shows that AEW's ever done. So we were like, this year is full of that. There was no way it was going to beat All Out as the best show they've ever done, but they're on a high right now.
I struggle with that. Yeah, I struggle with that. I feel like with the All Out thing, a lot of it was about the surprises that just you can't replicate that. Like
right.
In fact, even basically like 4 people come out, they didn't. You kind of expect it, but on that level,
you're not going to be
first match, all that stuff.
Yeah. You're not going to replicate that on that level.
This was a good pay-per-view.
This was, well, I think we can definitely say that this was in fact the best Full Gear they've done. This has been a
Oh,
year of.
yeah.
This has probably been their best year
Yeah.
of pay-per-views. Revolution was probably the weakest one, just because it was the last one in like the full pandemic mode, and there's not much you can do about that. And sort of, and or with the matches that they had sort of set up, and the unfortunate end of the barbed wire death, exploding
Yeah.
barbed wire death match. But
Oh, I
even
didn't know
that, even that being said, this is still probably their strongest year of pay-per-views. The
Yeah, I
last
think
two
the
have
thing is,
been
like,
among the
I think I
best.
was a little spoiled because I think that usually they do some type of like rumble match or something where you see a bunch of people at the same time. Like I think we were talking about before we were airing. It's like, you know, like even people like, you know, Matt Hardy, Orange Cassidy, like a lot of fan favorites weren't really on the card, but that's like no one. There wasn't a single match where I was like, oh, like they should have lost the spot. Like every match on the card should have been there.
And
Which
it's just
technically
too
I did
full.
not say about All Out. So
And this is a card where they had to have 3 tag matches in order to have everyone on there. So, but we'll start from the beginning, and we'll start with the buy-in because the buy-in counts.
The
Actually,
buy-in?
we'll start before the buy-in from what you were talking about earlier, Shamik, that with
the
they
angle was
brought
that
up- they were in Minneapolis, the home
Right.
of
And even Minneapolis,
Dante
oh,
Martin.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The home of Dante Martin. So they brought Dante Martin out, and we even got a little bit of a view of Team Taz. So Team Taz was there for a little bit, and the Acclaimed were there for a little bit too.
Yeah, but see, Acclaimed, you know, it's almost like they like not fully transitioned, but it's like they're making Max more the manager and like Bowens the in-ring guy, because Bowens has been doing a lot of fucking singles action lately on the big shows, as he deserves. That guy is awesome in the ring.
I think they figured out that, I don't know, like when it started, Max was front and center, and Bowens would do like a lot of the mop-up work, but Max was the better talker. But Bowens is getting to be a better and better talker. And as he gets to be one, maybe they see more long-term upside.
I mean, he was never a terrible talker. It's just Max. The gimmick is that Max talks more, right?
Yeah.
And like he's just like, hey, name of the city, the Acclaimed, we arrived, and like Max like there's like a scene or whatever. But Bowens in the ring, he has such a like good mix of every fucking style. I mean, he is solid in the ring. And I like that people have recognized that. That's how Brian Daniels had a match with him. It's like people are calling him out to have matches because they want to see him.
He had a great match with Jungle Boy on Dynamite. It would have been one of the best matches of that show if that wasn't the same show that had Pac and Dax Harwood have a singles match, which is one of the best Dynamite matches ever. I mean,
when you take two people who take seriously so wrestling as those guys, I mean,
he did a top rope brainbuster. I mean, geez, it's crazy. And that was before, and that was for their matches heading into a pay-per-view.
Right.
But we had
get the pay-per-view, so the buy-in, Jamie Hayter, like, you know, it was Thunder
Rosa. We almost forgot to mention. So the Acclaimed made an offer to Dante Martin to join the Acclaimed. He turned him down. Gonna have a match with Leo Rush. I'm sure somehow Team Taz.
Storyline confused me because like was Dante Martin supposed to juggle all these offers? Like first like FTR's like you know Team Taz is there, and then like now the Acclaimed are saying something. And it's like was Dark Order gonna like throw him a mask next and be like, hey dude, no, they don't recruit anybody anymore. So yeah, they should do that. Yeah.
Never stop recruiting.
Poor Darius. Darius is like, I'm his brother. I'm just like
Darius who?
Yeah, I'm
Darius who? What? Darius who? He doesn't have a brother. We're talking about Darius who?
No, he's not Fuego too.
He might be the rate that they're going. But then that gave us our nice buy-in. Hikaru Shida and Thunder Rosa, who's a great team against Nyla Rose and Jamie Hayter. And
yeah.
They're fine. You know, it was great right up until the end. They had a really innovative roll-up spot for the end that was maybe a little too innovative, and they couldn't quite get it. But the rest of it was pretty good. Jamie Hayter gets better each time I see her. She and Thunder Rosa keep redoing this same off-the-post splat spot to the back that really I'm just like, oh, I wish you wouldn't take that because it looks like you get your head busted open every single time she does it.
Talk to Ray Phoenix about that shit.
Like 3 times now, but you know, is a decent way to get things going before we jumped right into it with MJF versus Darby Allin. And
fucking tastic match.
This would be like on any other show. This would be
my second favorite match of the whole night by a fucking close hair.
You know, like on any other show, this would be the best match of the show. And the fact that you got a whole bunch of other stuff you can say, well, maybe about, and it didn't not to take anything away from this because they wrestled a wrestling match.
Dude, and that is becoming, because I complain a lot on this show about MJF should wrestle more, but now that
We
see,
watched MJF
know
wrestle.
matches that MJF had, they're going to be fucking wrestling exhibitions. That's what
I mean, we say that, but like you and I watched MJF wrestle a main event on the television show live,
Sure.
So it's not like he doesn't ever get in the ring.
Sure, but like, I guess what it is for a guy of his talent level, we wish we'd see it more. Like, he's not Bryan Danielson, like, who's wrestling 30 minutes every fucking week, that type of thing. But that's the thing, when you let him go, and again with Darby Allin too, because remember with the CM Punk match from the last pay-per-view, it was Darby Allin could keep up with CM Punk, and that was basically the whole story of the match, that Darby Allin could keep up. And the same thing here, where Darby Allin was keeping up with him it was basically like, it was a wrestling fans wrestling match. That's what it really felt like to me. Like,
he's like, I can wrestle. I don't have to do all the crazy stuff. Yes, I will coffin drop you off of everything I can climb up on, but I can wrestle too. Right up until the Diamond Ring came out, and just as predicted, we got pinned with a headlock takeover. I'm hoping that means the feud isn't done, because you got 50-50 some of the time. When the heel wins on a pay-per-view in AEW, that's the end, and everyone goes their separate ways. And half the time, it means, oh, this is the next step to the next level of the feud, and we're going
to creatively, like, who's on the deck or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what they want.
I think Max and Darby do have legs because, like they said, they're the pillars, right?
Right.
You want to see them, and also Darby hasn't gotten a win lately on the big pay-per-view.
No, he hasn't. He needs one. I mean, you don't want to be beating MJF.
So over, of course, but that's the thing. But you still, like, I think there are legs because even of that. Like, okay, Max got the first one. Make it like a Jericho style thing, where like you guys keep going at, because it's people want to see them both fight, and if they fight each other, that's even better.
It makes me feel like
crazy shit with the Pinnacle or whatever.
The fact that
what surprised that, Josh, I will tell you, I was hoping is a different word, but because they did this whole thing recently on the TV shows where they made Shawn Spears Wardlow's
accountability buddy,
which is like kind of like slowly pushing the split on them. I thought they would further that a little bit with the match, but that never happened.
No, they just came out and got beat up by Sting. They were making it a lot. They weren't doing storytelling. They were doing a straight up wrestling match. They same some of the storytelling later stuff.
Which always, in my opinion, like, he unnecessarily cheats at the end of the match. Like, I always feel like he's gonna win the match, and he's bored of it. He's like, "Fuck it, I just need to win."
There's no such thing as unnecessary cheating. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. But I think in this case, it's what makes me think that just means that they're not done with the story. Because usually when they do that, when MJF. Whenever MJF has to cheat hard to win, that means it's just like the next turn before they come back, because they usually want the babyface.
Yeah, I mean, compared to Darby's last struggle, like Ethan Page and everything, like, no, I'd rather see like another pay-per-view of this, honestly.
I think so. But you don't want to beat him too much either. You want to keep him strong, because eventually he has to be a good challenger for the next AEW champion, which we will get to, but not yet, because next, I mean, if you thought this was good, and then this is followed up immediately by FTR versus the Lucha Brothers for a tag team championship, which on any other pay-per-view would be maybe the best match of the show. And even here, it's probably like number 5. It went a little bit too long. And you want to talk about, doing storyline wrestling and a lot of goofy stuff. Maybe you don't need primarily to set up the storyline. There was a lot of that going on here, mainly because they have to have this match again at Triple Mania Regia for AAA in like 2 weeks. So they couldn't have a straight up finish here. But
so speaking of that
shenanigans,
you tell me, am I the idiot? Because to me, it was one of those things where I had to think about, and I was like, oh, this is what they were trying to do.
Yes.
But it did not seem evident when it was occurring.
Was it as clear as it could have been.
They did not execute that whole thing properly.
I don't know if there is any way to execute it properly. But
I kind of think I'm a master person, but I'm taking the pin. But like, it was so quick. It was just like,
it was so quick.
And maybe they were. Why are the masks on? All of a sudden, the guy's getting pinned. I was like, and then we did hear like Excalibur explain what happened.
Yeah, maybe they were running short on time. Maybe people, in the heat of the moment. The one thing people always say is like in the heat of the moment, it seems like things are going slower than they are, and then you get out and you realize you've been going like 400 miles an hour, so it doesn't really.
Like, I like the idea a lot. Right? I just feel like
it's
it didn't play itself very well on screen.
It's really tough to make that execute live because in order to get everybody
You know
to
what
read
the
all
problem
the
was
pieces,
with that storyline. So if
Yeah.
FTR gets screwed, they should have complained like for a shitload after the match.
they
right?
should have,
and they didn't. They just went right to the next match.
They just went right to the next match because they did that for everything. It feels
I guess
like
they're just playing on Dynamite next. Basically,
that's what it feels like. The next part of the story with all of the complaining will be happening on Dynamite, but they weren't going to like. They just weren't going to because AEW doesn't do that. They don't do the right. Let's take a lot of time to finish this thing.
Not even a lot. Just a little bit, like if them like yelling at the
just-
referee for like 5 seconds, even like, "Hey, what's on? Didn't see the pin." That would have
Maybe-
helped. That would have gone a long way.
I feel like I don't know. Maybe if we were there live, we would have seen it, and it's just not on a camera. I
But
don't
you
know,
heard the
but-
crowd reaction. I don't think that jives.
Yeah, just nobody really understood at the time what was
They were
happening.
very confused.
Everybody was very confused. It's like because well, I think what was confused is everyone was very clear that the non-legal man got. For people who didn't see it, what happened was
Well, why else did you use the gimmick?
Dax Harwood was the legal man. He went out of the ring. Cash Wheeler got one of the Super Arana. They both got the Super Arana's luchador mask. So then they suddenly, for the first time in the entire match, actually, I mean, they should have started wearing them in like the middle of the match to mock the Lucha Brothers, so that we got used to the idea of them wearing them because it looks really weird. Because when they come out of nowhere, Cash puts on the Lucha mask. He climbs into the ring for Dax. The idea being that with them both wearing the Lucha mask, they are now indistinguishable from each other. And so you have the non-legal man is pinned by the Lucha Brothers, and the referee raises the Lucha Brothers' hands with the classic statement that the referee's decision in the moment stands and cannot be undone by anyone.
Which is all implied, but not like they didn't directly say.
Well, I mean, they didn't have to say that because that's like one of the oldest, stupidest, but oldest, tropes within wrestling. I mean, they have said that because they have said that in other matches. You just take that for granted within
because the rest of the match was such a good wrestling match.
But because it was there were a few goofs here and there, and there's the beginning of a lot of Eddie Guerrero tributes, including.
So was his death anniversary that was going on?
Yeah,
there was a shitload of Eddie Guerrero shit.
Yeah, well, because
everybody had his tribute.
This was the 16th anniversary of his death, and he died at the Target Center. They were in Minneapolis, like minutes away from the Target Center.
He died in Minneapolis.
In Minneapolis, yeah. They were doing it. It was a pay-per-view was going to be
because even Nyla during the match did the whole thing for. I thought you had
Penta doing like the worst version of the Three Amigos I have ever seen in my life. I guess like his hips just will not swivel, not to save his life. He's a great wrestler, but no. So it was a very, very confusing ending because everyone who's in there is clearly going like, we can clearly see that the wrong man got pinned. So this can't be a victory, but they're acting like it's a victory. I don't understand.
This is where like some time to explain the story would have helped on screen.
Or at least having like Tully and FTR in there loudly just
yell at the referee or something.
They did not lose. The wrong man got pinned. But now we're going to have to. They just walked away because they had to rush to the next match because they had 9 freaking matches on this show, which isn't like a bad thing. But
there's one thing I want to say that I liked because there was a match where there's a spot where they I think. Which one's the one that's not bald? Cash?
Dax.
Yeah.
Cash. Cash is not bald.
Asked to the ring or to the rope, right?
Yeah.
And I kept thinking of Eddie Guerrero because Eddie Guerrero would have had 2 masks.
Yeah. Well, Pentagon's done that because he's had his mask tied to the rope and taken it off and had another mask under it so he could get out of it. So I mean, they've done that. Yeah. That's the problem with like redoing. I mean, this was a great match. They had one great bit where Phoenix came off of the top into a stuffed pile driver on Dax and jumped off of him to do a body a splash on Cash for.
Oh my god!
Probably should have been
Mario bouncing. Yeah.
That probably should have been the end. I think that was probably like the high point.
Also, it's hard to. I mean, that fucking Young Bucks match they had, like it's hard to top that. So.
Well, fortunately, this one came before that because everything. I tell you,
just, like the Lucha Brothers Young Bucks.
Oh yeah, the Lucha, the Lucha. But I mean, you weren't going to top like the Lucha Brothers cage match. That one was crazy. Although both the Young Bucks and the Inner Circle tried really hard on this pay-per-view, and I enjoyed both of those matches tremendously. But we finished with what probably will be the lead into a rematch between FTR and Lucha Brothers. That's definitely a story that's not over.
Partly because FTR still like champions, right? For some fucking reason. So,
because they want to keep that going, because they want to have because AAA wants them to have matches in Mexico, and they're scheduled to defend at the next big AAA pay-per-view coming up in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, when my best friend was like, "Is that an 80? Are they coming for like 80s music?" I'm like, "Yes, Midnight Express."
Yeah, like they're doing Midnight Express. They redid their whole theme to Midnight Express. They got Midnight Express trunks. It's great.
Yeah. The video is tight too. I like the new video. Yeah.
That's true. It was really good. So this was, I believe, this was followed up by the Young Bucks match. Wasn't that what was next? Didn't we go right from FTR to the Young Bucks? I know it wasn't Cody. Cody came after the Young Bucks.
Yeah, so it might have been So Young Bucks and the Super Click versus Jungle Express.
I mean, gosh, there's so much.
Honestly,
no. This was followed by Bryan Danielson and Miro for the Eliminator tournament. This is actually my second favorite. This was my second favorite match on the show, and this was tremendous.
Miro's thing, I love the whole after the Redeemer thing's over. Yeah. If you notice, fans, he used to have a cross around his neck.
Doesn't have anymore.
Wedding ring about his wife, and he keeps talking about wanting to fuck his wife, and that's the reason he fights his match. Is like, God, you must hate me, but I have to go home and have ridiculous sex with my wife. This is every promo he has now.
They're all great.
That's hilarious. But it actually, even for a guy who wasn't even in the tournament to begin with, but he went there, and even though, and here's the funny thing, Josh. So I automatically assumed that, we talked about the last show, that Bryan Danielson was going to win. But there were a lot of people that Miro was going to win.
There was a lot of people who thought. There was a lot of people who thought Jon Moxley was going to win, and they figured when Moxley went out that Miro would win just to keep the long-term story, which I never thought. I never thought for 1 second.
Writing, but
people aren't thinking about the best decisions for business or the best booking if they thought Moxley was going to win.
Don't get me wrong. Before Moxley's the rehab thing that he went through, I was intrigued by the whole, because I think, tell me if I'm wrong, the storyline was that he was a more vicious Moxley we ever seen. That he was going to come out basically making people bleed every fucking match, that type of thing.
Well, what I think is that, and I think people were making their expectations based on how protected Moxley has been, which he has been for most of his run. But if you look at this year for Moxley, a lot of it has been the story of Moxley losing. I mean, he's won a lot, but it's also been.
The Young Bucks for Eddie,
more than ever. Well, he lost to Kenny Omega at Revolution. And then he and Eddie he got cheated, but he lost. Then he and Eddie lost decisively at Double or Nothing in the tag team. Then he lost his U.S. heavyweight title to Lance Archer on a count out. When it's come down to the big match, last year when he was champion, he couldn't be touched. He was untouchable. And even before he was champion, he was untouchable. This year, it's it's all falling apart for him. And that's what I feel was what, was motivating his turn to a more vicious style that he just.
But I still think he was still going to lose to Bryan Danielson.
Well, I think that was the pit. I think that when it came to the big matches, he was losing. And I think if he'd been in this match, it would have been the vicious killer Moxley versus, the serious technical wrestler, and the technical guy was going to win. And that was going to really motivate Moxley to this heel turn that everyone thought he was going towards.
But we didn't get that.
Plus, it just made more sense because the same people were thinking that were thinking.
And we love seeing Miro, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, same people were thinking that were thinking Moxley would beat the next world champion and be world champion again. Well, that's not going to happen.
No.
I mean, he may be world champion again one day, but actually, I don't think he will. I think his run was his run. Yeah. There's some people with bad WWE brain who just can't. I don't know. They just can't. They shouldn't book. They think about matches they'd like to see and not what's good for business. And stuff makes no sense. I never got it for a second.
You've covered it so much, but I've heard other people talk about they're like, well, AEW had obvious results. And you're like, well, obvious results are fine if the story calls for that. If it's still a good story, even this pay-per-view is a very good example where literally there wasn't a single match where it surprised me the booking. But that's good. That means because I want those. That's the way the story should be going in all these sort of matches, So that's not a bad thing. Just make me interested. Which the main event was a good thing for that, but we'll get to that.
Well, it's kind of their their storylines are obvious because they should be, because they keep it simple, but also they book what's good for business. They don't
Sure.
do like other companies where they're like, well, we want to swerve or we want to
Yeah.
survive.
I mean, literally, the reason I stopped watching WWE is because they booked Lesnar to beat Taker. So, like, they didn't do shit like that. Like, yeah, I didn't expect it, but there's a reason I didn't expect it because it's fucking stupid. Like,
exactly.
So,
and I, like the only one I couldn't really guess was MJF versus Darby because the winner of
I
that
didn't
match
either. Yeah.
was entirely about who they were going to push into a main event scene next, and it could have been either of them, and there's no way to.
And no one loses their rub either, like by
Yeah.
losing to each other, right? That's
Right.
one thing. That was the only match on this card where like it was like it felt like a very open-ended booking
Yeah.
to me.
But it's like all the other ones, you can look at it and go like, well, this is what's best for business.
Exactly.
They are going to do what's best for business because they always do.
Yep.
It's just like whenever, and we will definitely talk about this, whenever they switch a championship, you can always see it coming because it's always time. Like when
Although
Baker
Mira
won,
lose to Sammy, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I was pretty sure.
But then again, I'm not mad at it either.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It was going to be either Sammy or Jungle Boy, and by the way they had it picked, it seemed like it was going to be Sammy. But it was like when Britt Baker won the women's championship, everyone knew she would because it was time.
Oh, she should have won that a long time ago.
And when because about a year is you want to do it in front of people, and you want to do it in a pay-per-view where you're going to get the
and also for people like those who like watch
the
every fucking show, it was nice to see a redemption thing where she like wrestled on Dark and wrestled on Elevation and all that stuff. Like that's what made me like her. Actually, I was like, wow, like you put in the work. Like, that's
When the Lucha Brothers beat the Young Bucks, everyone knew they were going to. You're like, it is time. These are the guys. It has to change.
See, that one I didn't think there. I mean, I wanted them to, but I
no, I knew. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was going to be there. It was time.
What's the next match on the card?
So the next match after this, speaking of, was the Super Click versus Jurassic Express and Christian Cage, and they did not outdo the cage match against the Lucha Brothers, but they tried. It's gonna hard to on execution, but this was a Falls Count Anywhere, no DQ street fight. Everybody came out in their jeans, including the dinosaur. I thought he should have been wearing like leather scale stuff like a dinosaur, but that's okay. Jeans
or feathers
or something or feathers. But they may not have outdone the cage match, but they really tried. They went for every level of lunacy they could come up with. Anything somebody thought of that they could try.
Dude, Adam Cole got beat the fuck up that match.
He did. Well, he was the first time. They was like they were like, all right, now's the time for you to
every fucking big bump.
Yeah. Well, he didn't dive off of a balcony like 46-year-old Christian Cage, who has a bad neck, who did like an ECW. I'm going to jump off this balcony down like 2 stories and crush Michael Nakazawa and Brandon Cutler. And
but you're also crushing this Michael
on BTE this week. You get a little bit extra of that because Brandon Cutler actually, if you watch the match, you see like all of them disappear into the back, fight their way into the back while you stay with Adam Cole and Jungle Boy in the ring, and then they reappear at the top of the ramp and then jump off. But on BTE, because Cutler's filming the whole thing, you actually see the filming of the fight of all 3 of them all the way to the back into an elevator where they're still fighting, and then out to the concourse. And the camera's rolling when he comes landing on top of Cutler, camera and all.
So that's a good point because this was a Falls Count Anywhere match, right?
It was a Falls Count Anywhere match.
I was saying my best friend when it happened, which didn't happen because usually the wrestling thing for this type of match is like to show like, oh, backstage and like, oh, we're in the locker room, we're fighting.
And they did do
some of that stage, and that was it.
I mean, they went on the stage. Well, they went up to they went into the backstage and up the elevator and out. The camera guys didn't follow them. So you saw
but the elevator thing wasn't on the pay-per-view. That's like what you saw on BTE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they did it.
I mean, it wasn't like that.
Well, no, they did it. So anybody who was like walking around in the concourse saw them do it. They didn't just like walk back, go in an elevator and walk out. They fought the whole way, even if people were watching them or not. But they didn't have any camera guys following them there.
That's what I'm saying.
The camera stayed in.
Pay-per-view, you didn't see that. It was just basically all they got to the ramp and then like Jungle Boy, because fucking the tax in his mouth.
Tax in his mouth, and then they got the tacked up.
Britt Baker after that match.
I know. And then he got super kicked.
That's how you get gingivitis, bro.
I'm sure they sterilized the bag of thumbtacks before they super kicked Jungle Boy with a mouthful of thumbtacks.
Every match you just have to have thumbtacks. Even in an office, we have electronic message boards. We don't have any thumbtacks. If any of the thumbtacks are personal pictures, that's
because there's a thumbtack shortage right now because they're all getting used in Young Bucks matches and nobody has them for their office.
Well, it's either that or tables.
Either that or tables. After they made their thumbtack knee pads so that they could give Luchasaurus a thumbtack BTE trigger.
See?
then after all that,
the last one had the thumbtack shoes, right?
the thumbtack shoes, multiple spears, and then finally concerto on oldest young buck, whose name is Matt.
Onto Matt. The animate one, so yeah.
I kind of thought they might pin Cole here since the trios. It wouldn't go on his record because
Cole did his
feels
worst.
like
he ate like almost every single big pump. But
his face was just
he did not get
mask.
much offense off.
No. Well, he did do a panorama sunrise off of like the lighting rig onto the ramp on Jungle Boy. That had to suck for everybody.
That's the one good look he got in basically before he just got beat the fuck up the rest of the match.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
No,
his face that's the thing. So you saw Jungle Boy just go away because I was like, apparently he's getting a dentist or a doctor to look at his mouth after that whole thing. But he just comes back up, puts Matt Jackson in the snare trap, and that's it.
Yep. No, they gave Matt. No, we put him in the snare trap, but then they gave Matt a concerto. That's it, and then he pinned him, and they gave Jungle Boy the win because. Yeah. And this one was another one I was sure of. I know, like the Young Bucks don't usually lose on pay-per-view, and I think a lot of people thought they would win, but like. Jurassic Express has lost to the Young Bucks a whole bunch of times, and they've lost
but they're pushing Jungle Boy.
So it was time for Jurassic Express to win, and very specifically for Jungle Boy to be the one to get.
Yeah, look, the three pillars. Like I forgot what the fourth pillar was. Like, Mac, MJF, Darby, Jungle Boy,
Sammy Guevara. Except for Darby because he was in the match with Max. Everybody, every pillar got a win.
All those guys were up there.
Yeah, they were all on the show. They made sure they were all on the show, and as much as possible.
So even though the XWW guys come in, they're still pushing the right guys. We're still got the win.
Yeah, and they're making sure you know it. They keep saying these are the four pillars.
By the way, fans, I didn't know until Max Caster's rap against him because he was like making fun of Jungle Boy, where he said like, "Oh, you stutter it in every promo." Like, that's funny, I get it. Like, he's not very handy. But then he's like, "Yeah, you're progressive because you leave your girlfriend with 7 guys." And I was like, "The fuck?"
And he's
dating Anna Jay.
Yeah, they mentioned it. They
I didn't know.
Yeah, they talked about it like way back in Double or Nothing, and they had like a bunch of pictures. They took a bunch of Instagram pictures.
So that's what the 7 guys came from.
Yeah. They made a big deal about Stu. Stu was so upset when he found out that Anna Jay and Jungle Boy were dating.
What? I mean, that's a BTE yet. Because now
it is very much a BTE.
Like, they think that he's imagining Anna Jay.
Well, she's back now.
So,
yeah. So he made a big deal out of that. He got very upset about that. And there was a great. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but there was a great Dark Order Easter egg too, right before the main event. But after this. We ran into I believe it was time for Cody, and was it this or was it Punk? I can't remember what was after this. I can't remember if it was Punk and Eddie.
Or
if it was Cody. I think it was after Young Bucks. It was I think it was Cody and Pac versus Andrade and Malachi Black.
Right.
Which was, some people said the women's championship match was the weakest. Some people said this match. This match I thought was a really good match. A lot of it just depended on how much you were into it or not, and what you think of all the stuff going around with Cody and the other guys. But I think they all it was polarizing. They all worked really hard. Cody got booed a lot. He wasn't like 100% booed. You had some "Let's Go Cody" chants. You had him booing, and you had him actively trying to get boos. I mean, he was blind tagging Pac and telling Pac.
Fuck! That was this match. So that took me out of it. I know what they were doing with the fucking tagging in and out, but like the fucking pacing of the match really suffered from that shit.
It went back and forth. Like at the beginning, it was
like story-wise, it makes a lot of sense, but like it's not fun to watch.
But it's not fun to watch and watch the different teams. You know, especially because it's going on with WWE. Like every WWE match nowadays is, can they coexist? And the story of this whole match was, can they coexist?
Yeah.
And I mean, now to be fair,
the whole match was people tagging in when they didn't want to be tagged in, or tagging out when they didn't want to be tagged out. That was it.
And like, to be fair, AEW doesn't do this very much, so it's okay. But yeah, it is. It's a storyline, and this was very much a storyline match of a story that's not.
It was an angle more than a match.
It was I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in it. You can't put
Of course, those 4 wrestlers, even Cody,
and Andrade and Cody and Malachi Black in a ring and not get some really good spots. And Andrade and Pac in particular were really, really, really good in this match.
They're always really, really, really good. I mean,
they have really good ring
chemistry. But this whole thing, the storyline dominated because the whole thing was like, oh, like I'm about to fight you. They're like, oh, I'm tagging myself in. Oh, what? You tag yourself in. I want to fight. Like, no. Yeah. And it wasn't just one side. They both were doing it, which is, again, storyline wise makes a lot of sense, but like it's tiresome to watch as a match. Because you don't know, your rhythm is taken out. You're like, okay, so you figure out who rooting for at the end, basically.
I still enjoy. I was rooting for Cody and Pac. I was rooting for the baby faces, and they have the clear baby faces. I'm not some goofy.
Hey, he's a clear baby face, right?
Yeah, he is a clear. Whether people want to root for him or not is another thing, but he's definitely the baby face.
Actually, did Malachi even pull out the Black Mist this match?
No, I don't think so.
But you know what we did see? Arn Anderson go.
Oh yeah, I think he's gonna do that in every match now. Right before he punched poor Jose in the face, I think he's gonna do that in like every match now. He's like, this is a lot easier than giving people a spine buster. So
I just made my friend out. He's like, wait, because we always make fun of Arn Anderson and it's like a Denny's menu. I'm like, no, dude, right. He like talked about shooting a fucking home invader and like a carjacker, and like it was kind of weird, but it weirdly works for him actually at the same time.
That's Arn. I mean, that's what he is. It's either that or he's making people burn their clothes, or who knows. That's all right. It's all motivating. But I enjoyed this match. I think the people.
What's happening after this?
I assume that it's going to be either they're going to go into another series of tag matches, or it's going to break down into everybody against everybody, and eventually.
I don't think I want to see another tag like this.
So I don't know. They got a lot of. It depends on what do they want to have it break down more until everybody's against everybody, or do they want to have Cody and Pac eventually get over their differences in order to definitively defeat their enemies.
And also there's weird.
They can go either way.
People are paying Andrade, or Andrade's paying people. Like there's factions like siding. Yes. Remember, like Andrade, like FTR works for Andrade now or some shit. Like,
well, he's renting there. He's renting.
Yeah, I know, because there's a whole money exchange. But like, it feels like they're complicating the stable situation a little with the whole thing.
Well, every Cody match is a little overbooked and a little overcomplicated. You got too many different pieces. I mean, every bit of it, to a sense, makes sense because Cody spent years making fun of FTR when they were in the WWE. He coined the phrase "fuck the revival" and he used to say it on BTE every single week, to the point where it was great when they had like that first beatdown on Dynamite. They were teasing him on Twitter and where they were hashtagging going like "what the revival," and Cody was like, maybe I should have rethought that. I shouldn't have started all this. And it was a lot of so in that sense, yeah. So in that sense, it makes sense. And, Malachi and Andrade makes sense when you consider Malachi is married to Andrade's former manager, which they have actually like referenced on commentary. So it's not like coming out of nowhere, but it's also at the same time.
With the other companies. It's funny, but yeah.
Well, they don't act like the other company doesn't exist. I mean, they referenced it during Rusev and Bryan Danielson. Danielson flat out said, like, I've wrestled Miro a bunch of times. I haven't been able to beat him. Every other time he's wrestled him has been at the other company. They don't act like it doesn't exist.
I would say I don't have a lot of people have a problem with them like mentioning WWE. I don't, if it like, because we're wrestling fans, especially AEW is like the biggest mark.
They don't go out of. They don't go.
We know what their history is.
They don't go out of their way.
Always that we know their history.
They don't go out of their way to say it just to take shots. There are a couple of wrestlers who do because they have a real grudge against WWE, and AEW lets them because they don't say it one way or the other. But what they don't do is they don't act like history doesn't exist or that the audience doesn't know.
His eye is so fucked up.
I mean, you don't have anyone like there are people in WWE who actively say like nobody who watches our show watches anybody else's show, and they believe that, which is bullshit. Nobody in AEW is going to do that because they know that it's not true.
No, even a lot of industries. We worked for a company where basically we weren't allowed to launch competition ever, right? So like
pretty much, it's still like that. People are still brainwashed, but what can you do? But AEW does do that. So, but this was another story match. At least half of the matches were story matches, as much as they were leading.
And at least it wasn't fighting like Anthony and Go-Go, and at least it wasn't a QT Marshall versus Big Show. So I'm fine with this type of match.
QT Marshall versus Big Show was great. I could watch.
Like, was awesome.
Yeah.
I felt like Nakai could have done more. Andrade got his spots in, which is good,
And he looked good. I mean, he has definitively made his spot in that upper mid card.
Even that storyline, top of the card. We just wanted to see them fight. We just didn't care about really who won. We just wanted to see spots against each other, type of thing.
You know what? I will defend QT Marshall versus Big Show because I can watch
No,
QT Marshall.
I feel like you defend QT Marshall just because, like,
I can watch. I can watch QT
you
Marshall.
know that rivalry.
I can watch QT Marshall get beaten up by the Big Show 7 days a week. Never gets old.
Really?
But
Never get old.
It would never get
I
old.
feel like you're giving Big Show a lot of credit.
Simple. You keep it simple. It's not ever going to get old. Yeah. Just like, well, I was going to say just like our next match, but actually that's not entirely true. So as for however polarizing the Cody Pac match was, it still drew a lot of heat for lots of different reasons, which meant the crowd was very quiet when we finally got to Dr. Britt Baker versus Tay Conti. And I think people were just like spent.
Well, I think also the problem is because just like we talked about the women's division a lot. Like we've talked about how a lot of these results are obvious, but like no one ever really thought Tay Conti was going to beat Britt Baker, and that's why it's separate, because like Britt Baker's either going to lose. I mean, most likely Thunder Rosa. That's probably going to happen. Or the other ones are Ruby Soho and Jade. That's it. Yep. No one in the women's like can even like is on that level yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody
even Jade is giving a lot of credit.
Yeah. Well, nobody. I will say nobody thought the Lucha Brothers were going to lose. And the other big title match on this show was also basically a foregone conclusion, and yet it was still a great match. And that's not to take anything back from these two. Some of it's because they don't really, I think the main thing is that they don't really have a storyline. And we talk about how like some of the matches were maybe weakened a little. I mean, they're still great, but they were maybe a more hash made out of them than they needed to be because they were storylines and angles happening in the ring rather than being pure matches. And this match was like the opposite, where there's really no angle. The entirety of the angle is she wants her title shot, which is fine. I mean, that's what the title is there for. But it also means there's nothing more than that to get you really invested. There's nothing personal. It was all about her getting it was all about getting the title. And you knew she wasn't going to, so there wasn't anything else.
So wait, correct me if I'm wrong. Did Britt Baker even lock? She didn't. Was the story that she didn't get the lockjaw on her, right? She
kept trying. Yeah, she did eventually beat her in the lockjaw. But the story was two things: was that the Tay Conti was a lot more than she could handle, and basically beat the shit out of Britt for like 12 minutes, and or 16 minutes, however long this ran, and that Britt kept trying to get the lockjaw on, and Tay kept getting out of it. And every time Britt would get into a position, Tay would get out of it, until finally at the end, Britt used that, like her ring awareness in her favor.
Right.
And Tay tried to get out of the lockjaw again. Britt was able to roll her up.
I was kind of hoping that it would also be like a continuation, because remember the match, I think, on Dynamite where Britt Baker was in the match, but then she let Rebel eat the pin, remember? Because like she could have interfered, but then she was like, nah.
And they didn't really do. I mean, they did have some interference. They did have Rebel there and some interference, but not as much as they've had in other matches. Which is good.
It added some color to the match for you.
I would say like the other, and especially because even with the interference they had, then Tay didn't have her best friend Anna didn't come running down to help her. And I guess part of me is glad they didn't do that, because I really don't like it when they way over book matches like that, especially on pay-per-view. But if you're not going to do it, then don't have like the bad guy interference either. I thought the other interesting part of the match is that was the overall story they were telling, because the last time out against her other challengers, like Britt, I can't remember the Nyla Rose match at all, but Britt like definitively beat Red Velvet and Chris Statlander. But like the story here was that she did not beat Tay Conti, she just barely won. But that was all. She barely won.
So you think it's going to lead to like a further program between the two?
No, I think this program's done and they're going to move to somebody else. But I think it's interesting in that it shows that, like, you know, she couldn't beat this person. And I think it shows how strong they feel like Tay Conti is, and that she's due for a push at some point.
I mean, I love Tay, but also at the same time, I don't think a lot of people are ready to see Britt lose that title yet.
No, plus my it's either going to be Revolution or Double or Nothing. I think.
Like if she'd have held it up for a year, come on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, on average, they do it for about 3 pay-per-views. She'd probably would have held it for a little bit less if they hadn't been for the pandemic. Right now, I'm leaning towards it's probably going to be Revolution, because at least in part because they don't have a whole lot of other babyface women. They can come back and run Ruby Soho again because she had to cheat. That's the other story. Like,
it's
she had
funny
to
you say
cheat to
babyface
beat
because really Britt Baker is the most like face of
I
shield
know.
we have, and not even because of her, because like people just love her, man. That's
Yeah.
it.
She can totally turn babyface and be great, but she probably won't do it until after she loses the belt.
But that's the dichotomy of her character, because like remember she was a face when she first started, but she was kind of boring. It was when she's a heel, but it was being interesting. So what,
Yeah, but she's also when she got
crowd,
like,
is that gonna make you like her again? Like,
well,
no.
it's also it's kind of like the Cody thing. It's like she gets cheered more as a heel than as a babyface, but that's not the reaction you want as a heel. And she is always having to work really hard to get booed.
As Maxwell
It's not like,
will tell you, yeah.
like MJF gets the right heel reaction.
He will like find a way to make you boo him. Like
Britt is having to work hard to get people to boo her. And you can see that if she goes babyface, people will just energetically cheer her all the time. And then she should probably just stay a babyface after that, at least for a long time.
Right.
But probably not while she's got the belt. So right now, my guess is Revolutions when they do the title change, because they just don't have, even if they bring in Ember Moon like they've talked about, or maybe Taya Valkyrie, they still just don't have a lot of other good babyface challengers for her.
They don't. I mean, Thunder Rosa is the only one I can think of right now. That and Ruby, but I'm pretty sure there's also TBS belt I'll think about.
There's
right?
TBS belt. There's Thunder Rosa, there's Ruby, there's Sheeta. Yeah, that's so I mean they can run those again, but they're running out.
Well, Amy Sakura has like a new, like there's Lulu Pencil and that Mace Suruga girl, which
but they're heels. They're all heels. Yeah, but they're all heels.
I like her. She's cute.
She's a heel too, though. They're all heels.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it can't be a queen and be like a face.
And Lulu Pencil's getting ready to go back to Japan, so we're not going to see her ringside.
No,
wow.
Sorry, after building up such a following here. Jeez.
I know. So this was followed by, and this was my pick for the weakest match on the show, and not to take anything away from anything anyone did, because they worked really, really hard. It's just the way it worked out.
Which one? The women's match was the weakest?
Women's match.
Yeah, okay.
Was the weakest. It's just a mixture of who they were in the card, and
it's the way the program's set up.
It's just the way like the program's set up.
Thunder Rosa or like Jake Her or someone that you actually think is a threat. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, and they just didn't have anything like there versus like, because you knew Ruby Soho wasn't going to beat her, and yet that match they had was a lot better than this one, just because.
Like even you can have like a match with a little bit of build to get people interested in, like the CM Punk Eddie Kingston match,
which had a 3 week build and was white hot. People were white hot.
That one promo. I mean, even like my friends that I showed it to, they were like, "Holy shit!" And here's the other thing. Eddie might have outperformed CM Punk on the whole promo war.
I think so.
And that's why you heard the match, which was a little short for my liking, but
12 minutes. But it was a fast 12 minutes.
And I think the reason I even downgraded that match in my mind is because I wanted to see more. And that's
not me.
I get
this was my number one match on the show, was Eddie Kingston and CM Punk. I didn't see, partly because of how hot the angle was coming into it. Like everyone wanted to see the fight.
CM Punk got booed.
They fought. And CM Punk got booed. That just goes to show.
With the Cody Rhodes Malachi thing, they don't boo Cody because they hate Cody, because they love Malachi Black that much. Just like this, Eddie with that promo. That just goes to show you. Love Eddie, man.
That just goes to show you how much people love Eddie, that they were going to boo
from a guy who wasn't
CM Punk.
Like like on AEW and all this stuff, and now like into a match with CM Punk on a pay-per-view and getting cheered.
Getting cheered over CM Punk.
Actually, that's still like up in the air with what they both were, because they're both saying mean as shit to each other the whole time. But man, people were fucking cheering the hell out of him.
They were cheering him over the biggest star in the company. That's crazy.
Exactly.
And Punk worked heel the whole match.
Forgotten the company, but like shit, I don't know.
And if you think about it, it started out with Eddie working heel, because he jumps the gun and does a spinning back fist before the bells even run.
Right.
And yet immediately he's getting cheers and Punk is getting boos, and from then on out, Punk works heel for the rest of the match, even though he was the one going over.
Well, because Punk, this was the crowd. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the intention of the match. I don't think so.
Well, they both do that.
I was doing and reacted that way.
Well, Cody definitely, just to go back, Cody definitely does that, because you can see when Cody's getting booed, he works heel. I mean, some of it depends on the story he's doing, but a lot, like he worked heel against Malachi. I know. But he worked heel against Malachi in a lot of the Malachi matches, which is one reason why Malachi's so over. But yeah, they definitely good good pro wrestlers will definitely do that. They're like, all right, we got to throw out the script because I'm getting booed and Eddie's getting cheered. So I'm
And
gonna
it
have to
wasn't like
look
the
heel.
Darby match with CM Punk where it was just like
Right.
kind of a wrestling exhibition for a little bit.
No,
Like
this
it
was
was
a
to be a
fight.
brawl, and they
It
kind
was a
of brawled
brawl.
for a little bit. And they pulled out
Yeah.
moves against each other
Yeah.
and everything. And of course, CM Punk, no one ever thought Eddie was actually going to go over with CM Punk.
Mm-mm.
But then after even CM Punk won after that incredible 11, 12-minute match, like he went to shake Eddie's hand, and
And
Eddie
he just left.
But you know what? Even then, it's like that's what Eddie Kingston would do. Like
Yeah.
that. No one ever thought it was a heel or face thing. Like no, like Eddie just said all this shit about you. Y'all went personal, like real fucking personal.
Well, it was
And
interesting.
And the match is gonna shake your hand. No,
It's interesting, and I'm interested to see if this is a continued story, because basically what it was a lot of this started with CM Punk saying, like, we all thought you had a lot of skill, but you wouldn't do anything with it, so none of us respected you. And at the end of this match,
he called him a bum. He called
CM
him
Punk
a bum.
is
Like that's
see,
not cursing, but that's like cursing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, shit.
At the end of the match, CM Punk is basically saying, okay, I respect you now. But Eddie's like, nope, not good enough for me. I'm still holding a grudge. So interesting developments.
And it just seems like he comes to just get over it. Even like,
Right.
although his face turn was a little bit kind of like that, like, when he was, especially with regards to like Penta and all that stuff.
Right.
But, especially the way I mean, that promo battle they had, like, a week ago, that was fucking like fantastic.
But at the same time, he has to stay the babyface. Just looking at the reactions he's getting from the crowd, he can't be, depending on what they keep doing with the story, he can't be the heel. Now, that doesn't mean Punk is turning heel. I mean, he's probably staying babyface for a while, but Eddie can't. Maybe he was going to, but if they're paying attention to the crowd, he can't. He has to
see. This is one of those unique matches where I love both of them as performers, because I feel like CM Punk's still gonna be CM Punk the way he imagined it. Eddie's gonna be the way Eddie is as he imagines it. The crowd does what it wants. It's still gonna fucking work.
It was great. I couldn't tell if Punk bladed or if he got busted open hard way. I think it was hard way, but he was.
Oh, really?
I thought he was.
It was like the first time he bladed
pretty well.
So I figured it was like a good blading. Yeah.
I couldn't tell.
So
they
this
were hitting
has
each
to
other
be
pretty hard.
I mean, it can't end like this.
I can't figure how it could, but
I mean, I was some Punk doing like his his like AEW tour where he like picks
I guess the question,
and that's all I'm saying.
It does. I guess the question is, do you use Punk? You get better use from Punk. Is it better for business if he keeps doing his tour and having different matches with different guys, or is it better business if he goes
but Punk's
an
like
extended feud with
year. Like he doesn't have to
Eddie.
rifle through people quickly. He can take his time with somebody, which this
Mhm.
Eddie Kingston thing might be a good one to just kind of like.
Well, it depends on what they're thinking about him. Is at some point your best use of CM Punk is to have him in the main event of a pay-per-view, because that's going to draw
for a title,
big money for a title match. So it's just a question.
I'm pretty sure that's why he's back, right? Because he wanted to be in that position.
So the question is, when do you do that? Do you do it at Revolution? Do you do it at Double or Nothing? Do you
let him and Eddie fight for longer? I mean, they gave us a tease for a 12-minute match on a pay-per-view. It's like you can do just 12-minute matches everywhere. Yeah. Although part of me did think, knowing CM Punk coming back and Eddie Kingston, I'm like, maybe they were both legitimately like out of breath by the 12 minutes in there.
Well, I know. I'm like, how much of this is selling, and how much are they like both legitimately gassed? And like, we just
exactly. That's what I was.
But the whole thing went a good, like the 4 hours they scheduled. So I don't know. So after this, this was
point to that Tony said that he wasn't going over 4 hours, and
which is good.
58-minute match type of thing. So, which makes me think
is good.
Kind of wrap it up. But I don't think they complained about it. Like I don't think Eddie and CM Punk were like, oh no, we want to go more. Like no, that was good. We get the
when their match quality is really high, you don't really notice how. I will say, watching a lot of like the old WWE pay-per-views, I really appreciate how most of those are like 2.5 hours. And I wish that, that's like a really good time limit for a pay-per-view.
I know.
But with,
not a WrestleMania.
Well, God, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. That's, I mean, 2 nights is like the only way I can.
Oh, yeah. That's a new time. Yeah.
But we're going to drive up to Dallas for WrestleMania next year. You got tickets for the family. And I just want to see one live. It's like going to Super Bowl. You guys see one live.
This is the best Eddie Kingston match I've seen.
Yes, this is the best. Well, no, it's probably not as good as the Bryan Danielson match, but it was the one I was most invested in, and it was the one that
I mean,
like the hottest angle.
Lead in for this match, right? Because like he was upset. I mean, even it was a flimsy cause. I was like, wait, so you're upset that CM Punk? Like, I don't even think CM Punk even talked about him. He just seemed like he randomly came in and just was raging against CM Punk.
Yeah, he just
like,
came in.
Like
and
a flimsy premise.
In
so they had that promo battle. I'm like, okay.
And then they sold it, really, really, really well with some real stuff. And they did it, it was short enough that you had basically an hour left for the last two matches, which is good because the last two matches used like all of that hour and change. And I don't feel like there was a single wasted moment. So after this was the attraction match.
The top team versus inner circle match?
I loved the top team versus inner circle match. This kind of stuff. It's not for everybody. And if they did it all the time on every show, I would probably get tired of it. But doing it every so often, I will laugh and laugh and laugh my ass.
So here's some extracurricular stuff. Honestly, when it comes to the match, I was here or there with it. It was nice to see because you're there to see Dan Lambert get his ass kicked, and that was fun. But there was something that I read about because I read MMA news once in a while, but Jorge Masvidal was injured. He actually can't be in his next match,
right?
And so I wondered if he was wrestling training and got injured, and that's how this happened.
He wouldn't be able to show up if he had to pull out of a UFC match from injury, but then showed up at a wrestling pay-per-view. He would get
no, but of course he couldn't do either. But I'm wondering if that's why he pulled out.
That's why he got injured. I don't. I think once he got signed for that UFC match, everybody sort of wrote him out of this, which is too bad. But I'm sure they'll get
Page's name Zant because I like the banter between them and the
you know what? I will not be surprised if we see Paige Van Sant come back again and do something more direct.
I want to see Dan Lambert come back. To me, he's like a manager 2.0. Like you want to see him get his ass kicked every time.
Yeah, I'd love to see.
And he's so good at buying into shit. Like when even only one person can say fat face dipshit. He's like, "Don't call me a fat face dipshit."
Yeah, and then he gets so angry. Oh, he's a great heel.
The whole thing,
he was great in that velour blue jumpsuit he wore for the whole match. While he's on the sidelines.
He's like, "No, I said I'm not supposed to fight this man." Start yelling like everything. Like he's so cartoony, and I love that.
And it's perfect because this is as cartoony a match as you're gonna get. It's whatever every match on this show was so different from everything else around it, but it all flowed. I mean, this couldn't be more different from the Eddie CM Punk match. I'm sure people are like that are gonna hate it, but I laughed from almost the minute it started.
You know what you're in for. You're gonna see Trish Circa beat the shit out of Dan Lambert at some point. Dan Lambert tried to get a pin because they said, "Oh, Dan Lambert has to eat the pin or take the pin, whatever." He knew what was gonna happen
because they're gonna shit on anything that's not uber serious, whatever. Some people are like that, but look, you're getting guys. Sammy Guevara got a football and threw a football at Ethan Page's head. Somebody got smacked in the head with a toaster. They did a Jeff Hardy-esque swanton off of a 18-foot ladder through a table.
Him and Sean Spears in a room full of chairs.
They pretty much, but even better. They were screaming about people getting hit with a bunt cake pan, and JR's going, "Not the bunt cake." I mean, Dan Lambert.
He broke the bunt cake in half.
Dan Lambert got stapled in the balls with a stapler. I mean, it's just going to be, and of course, and Ethan Page.
I call that Hilton's finisher when I saw that in office. And my best friend was like, "Is Swingline from Minnesota? Why does stapler part of this match?"
Why not? And my favorite bit, Ethan Page ate an iron claw from Baron von Raschke right there at ringside.
That guy had it loaded the whole time. I mean,
he sure did.
With the years he barely had left the whole time.
He's like, I'm ready. And Page sold,
also being from Texas, I kind of thought that was like a Von Erich
thing. It was also a Von Raschke thing. Yeah, and he's not the only iron claw guy.
Also, Baron von Raschke is such an old school great villain.
It is. Well, he was an old. Remember when they showed him
with wrestling, basically.
When they showed him in the crowd, I was like, "Holy shit, it's Baron von Raschke!" And then I was like, "Okay, he's the guy to get involved somehow in some way." And I feel like Ethan Page held this match together. I mean, every time I see him, I'm like, "That is a great wrestler." And he was cartoony. A lot of the worst stuff he ate. And sold a lot of the best stuff so that Jericho could stay in the ring and not be doing it, and to hide a lot of what the MMA guys were doing.
When I talk about when going back again, because it seems to be one of my favorite topics about who Cody gets based to get people cheer him again. Ethan Page comes up, he's a heat magnet. Yeah, people. I mean, they're not going to cheer Ethan Page. So
he gets heat real easy, and he's really good in the ring. And I haven't seen him have his match with Darby was great. His match with Sammy was great. This match was great.
That's the only weird thing about this whole thing, because I've always felt like Sky and Page, even promo wise, could carry their own bags. They were fine. They didn't need Dan Lambert, but
they wouldn't have been. They wouldn't. But at the same time, they wouldn't have been on the pay-per-view without him.
Right? Yeah. So I
get the MMA guys are an attraction, and Men of the Year are not. But
you think that's going to keep going on? Where they're America's top team going to be
if it was anyone else, I wouldn't think so. You know,
He's done a lot of
sometimes
wrestling, man.
sometimes Jericho does like a one and done, but I mean, like most of the things he's done, it's been like two or three. There's been like a follow up, a follow up, a follow
Oh,
up.
so you think this is like a
So I don't
it's
know.
like a stadium stampede for just like that?
Maybe. Well, I don't think he's going to do anything that's going to take like a year, like he did with.
You should do a Melissa match
yeah.
against Dane Lambert.
I know, right? But like the Orange Cassidy stuff, he did for a whole summer. That was like 3 months worth of
Yeah,
stuff.
but that actually effectively did get Orange Cassidy over.
It did.
As disappointing as the last match was, but they still very much got
but it worked. If they can do that with Minute of the Year, that would be great. So I don't know. It depends on, and it probably depends on what the fighters have too. Like Dos Santos seems to really want to do this, and he's actually seems pretty good at it. And I think Paige Van Sant could be really good at it. I guess it depends on what her schedule's like. But I had a ton of fun with it.
It was something like Inner Circle.
This one was, yeah. This one seemed crazier even than the Young Bucks match. I mean, they had so much goofy stuff. They didn't jump off of any. Well, they did.
But it was supposed to be about this. Like, you MMA fighters against wrestlers. You're supposed to see this. Like, you know, I compared it to my friend, which is very bad.
Well, they weren't. Yeah, but they also.
That's what you're saying.
They also weren't going to have just a tag team match with a bunch of MMA guys. So they needed all of the smoke and mirrors in order to hide stuff. But and there were a few like blown spots. There's at least one point where I saw Jericho having to call one of the MMA guys into his position because he was totally. But you know, but I give him
exaggerated motions, like
something like that. More like yelling at more like yelling at the top of his lungs. But still, you know,
that's what he always does.
That's what you kind of got to do when you're with a bunch of untrained guys. And I thought it worked. You know, it was a lot of fun. And it was a really good palette.
That's the main thing. It was fun.
Yeah. It was fun, and you needed like a lot of like light fun. You don't want to do two heavy matches back to back. You wanted some light fun. You know, New Japan does that a lot, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's exhausting. And they needed that because they were going to have a super heavy match for the follow up. Because our main event was Hangman Adam Page versus Kenny Omega, a match they have been building for 3 years.
3? I keep hearing 2. Is it 3? Okay.
And it sort of depends on how you count and how you.
That's true. Is it when they first became tag team partners,
or is it? Well, no. This goes 100% back to the first Double or Nothing.
Oh, we forgot to mention
this.
So even before this match started, they did make a big segment with Adam Page going up to the Young Bucks.
Yep.
And apologizing.
Yes. He's like an alcoholic going through his 12 stages.
I don't think they want to use that whole thing with the Fox thing going on. But he went up to Young Bucks and he was like, "Hey, I never said this before, but I'm sorry for costing you a shot at the title."
Yeah,
that's it. Which apparently played into what happened in the match.
Very important. You know, he's making his absolutions before going off to the ring, and had a really great intro with him on his horse through the streets of Minneapolis. And I didn't notice it until I saw it on Twitter. But as the helicopter shot is flying through all the buildings and coming up on the Target Center, you can actually see a whole bunch of people running across the sky bridge into the Target Center, and that is in fact the entire Dark Order, all in character.
Oh, of course it would be. But here's what we forgot to mention this, and this is my fault. What match was it where somebody brought the Prince sign and beat somebody with it?
That was the previous one. That was the
We're talking about Minneapolis.
I feel like that was a plant. I feel like that was such a perfect sign.
Purple Rain. They started chanting Purple
Rain. I feel like the Prince sign was such a perfect sign that it I feel like it was a plant. It was like somebody had some idea, like,
of course it was.
Get somebody a Prince sign.
Everybody loved Prince, so like as long as
so that we can
like we can do that, yeah.
So we can take the Prince sign and smack someone in the head with it. Yeah,
it's Minneapolis, dude. His death was a big deal to a lot of people. Like, that was a good thing. So so they showed Adam Page like going through the town on his horse, and it's so funny because when I was talking to my best friend about it, I'm like, so is Adam Page gonna ride horse into his the stadium? Because
he already did that.
Darby matches. Darby always drives out in the middle of fucking nowhere and picks up singing, and I'm like, sir, and then even the Darby enters like he crashed his car. I'm like, this is not how you get to a match. This is not how you get to a match. And so with Adam Page, I was like, at least he's on his horse on the fucking arena streets, so he's like on the way to the match. Yeah.
Well, he already did the horse to the stage in his first world title match. The original All Out.
I mean, it wasn't as good as Stadium Stampede. I mean, literally.
It's not as good as but so we've had a 3-year build for this match, slightly delayed from All Out, but they finally had it with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. And just like we always say, like you know what the outcome is going to be, because
That's
there's
the thing.
only one outcome that makes sense. And if they
But
go
how
against
they
it,
told
would be
it.
stupid. But how they told it and the story they built to get you there,
Yeah.
it makes you super invested in everything that's going to happen.
I mean, we see the stories leading up to this, but even within the match, like, because we thought there'd be a lot of shenanigans and interference, but there was a surprisingly
Only a
low.
little, only a
Yeah.
little with Don Callis, because that's what he's
Right.
there for.
Which of course, just like Don's there, right? I mean, yeah. But yeah, I mean the whole thing, like you thought I actually thought Dark Order was gonna be a bigger part of the match. They weren't.
They
It was
weren't.
very
Young Bucks
clean
didn't come
match
out till
between
the
both.
end. No, they did a very clean Japan style match, almost 30 minutes. Very slow build. Started out slow, build
People
faster and
trading
faster and
finishers,
faster
like
until they were
all the
trading
classic good
finishers.
shit. Yeah.
The one thing that I still don't know how I feel about it. At the time, I felt a little bit of a letdown because it was one of those things where it seemed like they'd been building for it and then didn't pay it off, or they paid it the way they paid it off. I don't know if it landed the way it should have. So they've been like two elements that they have been building for this story. One is that, Page had to beat Omega, that he had to find himself and center himself, and then finally overcome his doubts and fight his demons and beat Omega. And the other is that Omega's finisher is unbeatable and nobody ever kicks out of it. And the way they've told both of these stories, it feels like they have been tied together, because they always seem to bring it up whenever Hangman's around. And the feeling a lot of people had going in is that Omega was going to hit him with his finisher, but Hangman was going to kick out of it. And
no, they
that's
protect
a big deal.
I'm okay with that.
Well, the thing is, it's the way they've talked about it, it's like a really big deal. If it happens, they should make a big deal out of it. But then they swerved us a little bit in the match, and then what happened was that Hangman kept getting out of it, and then he hit Kenny Omega with the one-winged angel, and Kenny Omega kicked out of the one-winged angel.
Sure.
And I guess you could make the statement that it's not Hangman's finisher, so he didn't do it well enough.
Yeah.
And something, but it didn't feel like
who's going to do your finisher better than you.
It didn't feel like they made as big a deal out of it as they should have. They just kind of went, "Oh, he got out of it." It's like he kicked out of the move no one kicks out of.
Oh,
don't you think you guys should make a bigger deal out of that? I mean,
I get what you're saying, but like, and I think I that argument, but like, I think they did it fine, especially with the way it ended. Is that Kenny ate two buckshot lariats?
Two buckshot lariats.
Yeah, one he didn't see, and the other one, when the Young Bucks made their way down the ring, and they gave him the nod to like just do it.
And that was like good. That was where you started going to storytelling over match, because it meant that Kenny had to sort of like stand in the middle of the ring, semi wobbling for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
while he set him up on roller skates while he got the nod from Matt before he could do the last one.
Well, even when I saw the Young Bucks make their way down the ring, I was like, wow, take your time, guys. And then first of all, and then second of all, actually, I was like, wait, they're not interfering? Like,
well, that
I saw that immediately when they came down the ring. I was like, that's weird. Like, they're not interfering. They're just there.
And they had like other shenanigans, because they had a ref bump. And they knocked out the ref, and Aubrey
had
sprinting down to the ring. Classic ref bump. And then they tried, in between Aubrey coming back, they tried to do the belt shot, but Hangman is a smart baby face, and he was looking for it this time. He got out of the way. He beat up Don Callis, which I'm sure everybody was happy about. But then Callis stayed on the apron with the belt like on his feet. And maybe it just ended up that way, but I'm sitting there going like, he hasn't rolled out. He stayed on the apron until the end of the match. He didn't get up again, but he just stayed there. And I'm like, he's still on the apron. The belt's still on the apron, like right next to him. There must be more shenanigans coming. Yeah. And then they never did. And then they never did. So I'm like,
Storm's already here.
I'm like, why are you doing? I'm like, I'm glad you didn't do it, but why is he still there? And why is the belt there? And why do they keep getting on camera if you're not going to use them? Chekhov is rolling over his grave here. It's just so that was Chekhov's belt. So that was a little weird. I mean, but for the most part, it was a great match. It was just, there's a few little nitpicks I can make here and there, but just a few.
Really, because actually, the only thing I was disappointed was the fact that I knew what was going to happen. But I thought, especially with the Young Bucks turning, I'm like, are the Young Bucks going to be faces now? Like, I have to ask you, because like, was there something that set this up? Like, were the Young Bucks upset with Kenny? That's something that led to this?
No,
or?
It's more like,
is that the story? Like, it's
no, no. I don't think they are upset with Kenny. Not that I could see, but it's more like, so it's actually very complex. And the fact that the reality is they are both friends with Kenny and with Hangman. Sure. And they are caught in the middle of this, and they've done this before because they did this when Cody and Kenny were fighting over.
Well, it's almost like all they were
Honor
waiting for the
Championship.
whole time was to wait for Adam to like
And maybe
apologize.
when Adam apologized, it finally reminded them that okay, maybe we
That's
have
all we ever
been-
wanted, bro. That's it.
Well, maybe if they
Nipsey mustaches and Air Jordan Dior and all this
Yeah.
stuff.
well, maybe kind of reminded them that he was their friend and made them think that okay, maybe we have been a bit of the jerks in this as well.
I'm just saying, like, you're gonna see Kenny and Don be kind of mad at the Young Bucks, right? That's what
It's entirely possible. Well, now we have multiple different options. We have lots of stuff again.
Yeah, they
Young
open up the
Bucks-
story a lot with this whole thing.
Does Kenny break with the Young Bucks over this, or does he?
Yeah, it's
rethink
elite
his
done.
ways? Well, Kenny's actually probably going to have to take some time off because Kenny's like in a bad way. He's been carrying.
But he's been working though.
for,
He held 4 belts, bro.
Yeah. When
he's been working.
he's still got to do a championship match for AAA because he's also on that AAA show in December. But like he apparently like can't lift his shoulders. He's been wrestling with a torn labrum for like 12 months. Like he needs surgery and time off. I mean, he's been carrying like 3 promotions for a while, so he really needs some time off. But so they might not have him react to this stuff right away. But you do have a lot of ways you can go because now you've got Adam Cole in the mix. Does Adam Cole?
Where's Adam Cole in the middle of all this, right?
Does Adam Cole tear the Young Bucks away from?
Is he super click
Kenny,
or is he elite?
Right. Does Adam Cole reform Red Dragon with Bobby Fish and everyone assumes appearing Kevin O'Reilly, Kyle O'Reilly coming over?
Undisputed.
And do they start feuding with the Young Bucks and that forces Kenny to turn elite? Because Kenny and Adam Cole have never gotten along. Technically,
yeah, because you want to get the
Young
Bucks friend, right?
That's right. So that's exactly
the biggest thing as a storyline is that, like, what is it to me is what does Adam Cole do?
Mm-hmm. Adam, yeah, I would not be surprised if Adam.
Who's he get kisses from when he puts someone in a camel class?
I would not be surprised if Adam
really
Cole
intimate wrestling move, but yeah,
tries to get the Bucks to leave Kenny, and when they won't, he turns against them and reforms like a new version of the Undisputed Era.
I mean, the Elite hasn't had this level of intrigue in a while.
Yeah.
Like,
plus, if Kenny's gone, or even if Kenny turns his back on the Bucks and goes his own way because he feels like they turned against him and all out. What happens if Kevin Steen shows up and they reform Mount Rushmore of wrestling? And now Kenny's on the outside. Mount Rushmore of wrestling is there.
More intrigue.
Era. There's a lot of potential for intrigue out of this. This is just the
again. It's not. We knew Adam Page was going to beat him, but the way they told the match opens up all these possibilities, like creatively. Like
plus, on top of that, now you've got what should be a year of the real test is a year of Adam Page as AEW champion, main eventing pay-per-views, and who's
more Dark Order sketches on the TV.
More Dark Order sketches. That's what we need. So, well, we've got a number 1 challenger. So the first thing we'll see is, and this is why you knew what was going to happen. It's much better for business if Adam Page beats Bryan Danielson than if he beats Jon Moxley.
Of course, otherwise the storyline didn't
Bryan Danielson.
2 to 3 years stuff like for what?
Right. Exactly. And it makes a lot more sense if the champion is the one who gives Bryan Danielson his first loss, not just Jon Moxley.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
And then after that, what do you got? Miro, maybe. Adam Cole, definitely somewhere down the line. Sure. MJF, somewhere down the line. I don't know. They may be soon, maybe far away. Those are the 3 that I can think of off the top of my head.
At least AEW does such a good job building all these people up to where I'm like, now where do you think you want to see these people on? Even my favorite CH2, like, you don't see them on TV anymore because there's no spot for them.
There's just too many. There's too much going on. There's too much stuff. Just like we've talked for an hour and a half and we said we'd do it for like an hour because there's just too much stuff. And we're already starting to head into All Out or to Full Gear Fallout. We'll see some more this Wednesday with the thing I am most excited for. Orange Cassidy and Tomohiro Ishii against the Butcher and the Blade. We will hear also
from Wednesday on Dynamite.
That this Wednesday on Dynamite. Tomohiro Ishii is one of the best wrestlers in the world. He is the Stone Pitbull. His whole thing is that he's like this squat rock of a man. He cannot be hurt.
Can't budge, yeah.
Yes.
Like low center of gravity shit.
So imagine somebody who's the same height as Leo Rush, but like 3 times as wide.
Yeah, like Jerome Bettis.
And he just, but he's fast and he's strong. And when he gets at when the match gets really going and he gets really hulked up, then he just starts no-selling finishers and beating the shit out of people. He is tremendous. He will typically have like best match out of the G1 every year when you have everybody having their best match of the year and a bunch of match of the year contenders. He is
he's in the mix for that every year.
Yeah, he is one of the best wrestlers in the world. So to see him going against Butcher and Blade is great. To see him doing that tag teaming with Orange Cassidy, I am trying to imagine what that is going to look like.
Because that level of comedy to his match, right? But at least he's on the same team, so you think he's gonna help him. Yeah. I mean, we didn't think Sting was going to be hilarious, but Sting is kind of hilarious. It's like
that's true. You put him with the right guys at all. Yeah. So far, AEW has
Orange Cassidy. That shit was
well, AEW has my trust in being able to make these weird experiments work most of the time. It'll be obviously he's like the number 2 guy behind Okada. So I'm assuming that this will not be the end of the story, but is in fact going to be. Both he and Okada are in the States right now. They just did a pay-per-view in San Jose Saturday. So they're both here.
They're ready to fight.
Weeks. So we should be seeing it. They're here. Jay White is here. Will Ospreay is here. Will Ospreay and Okada don't like each other. Jay White and Okada don't like each other. Jay White and Kenny Omega don't like each other. We should see something.
Right. Like I mean, we've been talking. You've been especially talking about like Jay White being here like for a while. Like Switchblade's got to come over. So and he's got to come over. Like I've just gone to HAPW. Like this Jay White's guy, like good. I'm like, yeah. Josh keeps talking about it. Yeah. So hopefully we can see them on our TV on an AEW ring soon.
I hope so. They have both mentioned it. So hopefully they only.
Were they going to do WWE? Yeah.
They've mentioned it in passing. Okada has been mentioned by a lot more than in passing, so I'm assuming that we are heading directly for that story.
Okada's the name I've heard the most out of the whole thing.
Yeah. It feels like that's inevitable at this point, and some point in like the next couple of weeks. So
they're definitely building towards it. Where JR has to drop all these names like in the middle of a match. I'm like, okay, like I get it. Like they're going to be on the card soon.
Okada has basically like a month and a half of nothing to do because they're in the middle of World Tag League, and Best of the Super Juniors in Japan. And he's not involved in any of that. He doesn't have anything to do until January when Wrestle Kingdom hits. So they've got time for him to like dive into the mix here and do something big. So let's do it. Let's see it. May even be possible some AEW guys get to Wrestle Kingdom, which is going to be 3 nights this year. Like
I think Brian Dance would love that opportunity. I'm pretty sure that's
way back in 2020, we forget. Like way back in 2020. John Moxley and Chris Jericho were both on Wrestle Kingdom, and then they came back and were on Dynamite like the same week. So yeah, I'm sure there's some guys
like Jericho Mega Match was fucking awesome on like Wrestle Kingdom or whatever. Yeah,
it was a 5-star match. It was one of the things that led to AEW forming was that match.
Right.
But I bet you there's a bunch of people on the AEW roster who would be great at Wrestle Kingdom, and I'm sure there's some guys they'd like to have. So it'll be very interesting to see. Yeah, obviously,
at least it's a working relationship now. So get ready for these possibilities.
It feels like
they might come out of nowhere, but Josh will tell you exactly where they came out of.
I will tell you where they came out of and exactly how it led us there, and everything that's happening will lead to it. That's right. Exactly. But until that time, we will keep you apprised of everything happening in the world of All Elite Wrestling and through the forbidden doors, such as that exist and beyond. I am worn out now from all the wrestling I've watched. I watched 8 hours of wrestling on Saturday and a birthday party.
I like the Saturday pay-per-view. That's a good thing.
I do too.
It frees up your Sunday a little bit. Just to
Everybody's
rest.
doing it.
Saturday night pay-per-view.
Everybody's doing it now. Even WWE's starting to do Saturday night pay-per-view this year. So everybody's learning it.
Gotta follow the trend. Yeah.
Gotta follow the trend. Not next week. They're doing Survivor Series on Sunday, and nobody knows and nobody cares. So that's their problem, though. For now, though, we've got a whole bunch of interesting storylines on the way from AEW, and pretty soon we'll be starting to build towards the move to TBS in January and their first big Saturday special, the Battle of the Belts, January 8th, and then Revolution will be
my sister's
around the corner.
No, she doesn't like wrestling, so it doesn't matter to her.
It'll only be like an hour. It'll be fine.
Elvis's birthday, I think. So yeah.
There you go. Everybody shares a birthday with somebody famous.
I think Charlie Chaplin's close to mine, but didn't share it.
My birthday is the same day as Keanu Reeves.
Also, I met a girl who had the same birthday as I did, and we're not very similar. She's not very bright, but she's very attractive. Anyways.
That's another story.
Right.
We will get into that more in yes, in our sister podcast, right. SER, Shamik Elite Reviewing, where we get into all the facets of Shamik's life and all of his many failures, and we dissect them.
He's gonna run along like my dick. Anyways,
it's like the material basically writes itself at this point. As you can see, unfortunately, it only has a viewership of 1, but we're working on it.
Hey, we love you. The producer's not my mom, so that's good.
And until that time, I'm Joshua Starnes.
And I'm Shamik Ghosh.
And this has been All Elite Reviewing. Cue the music.